at a time when hundreds of career prosecutors have quit because they were required to take unethical actions at odds with that promise, or feared that they would have to take such actions if they remained on the job. When over 1,000 former federal prosecutors have sounded the alarm about the unprecedented degree to which the powers of DOJ are being abused to go after the president's enemies. I approach this hearing with a heavy heart. As a former federal prosecutor myself, I served in a department that, whether it was under a Democratic or Republican president, would never use the office to go after the president's enemies or to hide the corruption of his friends. But today, the Justice Department has been used to cover up the possible corruption of the mayor of New York or of a high-level administration official taking $50,000 reportedly in cash in a bag, or a child sex predator who befriended the president and some of his cabinet members. And instead of preventing partisan weaponization, your department has engaged in a brazenly political prosecution.
Senator Schiff, as I stated earlier, I was not in office, I was not confirmed when that was handled.
So does that
Deputy Attorney General Blanche and Director Patel said that there was no evidence that Tom Homan committed a crime. Yet now you're putting his picture up to slander him.
No, I'm putting his picture up showing an interview he gave with, I think, Fox, in which he was asked explicitly about these allegations that he took a $50,000 bribe, and he refused to answer. He said he didn't answer the question whether he took the money, so I'm asking you the question. Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, I answered that question multiple times. And frankly,
Well, I don't think, with respect, I don't think you did. But in case I just didn't hear you, what is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether he took the money?
All I know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
and,
was she?
Senator Schiff,
was she
if
right?
you worked for me, you would have been fired because you were censured by Congress for lying with your egregious.
We can stipulate to, you can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
Personal attacks? You've been attacking my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking.
But what we're interested in.
Borders are.
What we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You were
asked by my colleague. You were asked by my colleague.
Attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Homan taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you support?
You don't have to tell me what is my decision and what is not my decision. I said you can talk to Director Patel.
You don't have to try to.
You think you've got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our borders are.
Excuse me.
Who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask a question. Regular order, please.
I need to walk you through what just happened in a congressional oversight hearing, because what you witnessed wasn't just political theater or partisan bickering. This was a masterclass in how accountability dies when people in power decide that answering basic questions is optional. Adam Schiff sat across from Attorney General Pam Bondi and asked one straightforward question over and over. Did Tom Homan, Trump's top deportation official, take $50,000 in cash from undercover FBI agents? And Bondi refused to answer, not once, not twice, but repeatedly throughout the hearing. And what she wouldn't say might matter more than anything she actually did say. Let me give you the context, because this story is explosive, and the fact that it's not dominating every news cycle tells you how normalized corruption has become. 2 weeks before this hearing, 4 major media outlets reported that Tom Homan took $50,000 in cash in a bag from undercover FBI agents back in September 2024. According to these reports, Homan indicated he would facilitate securing contracts in exchange for money once he was in office in a future Trump administration. This exchange was allegedly caught on tape. This isn't speculation or anonymous sources making vague claims. This is multiple credible outlets reporting on what appears to be a classic FBI sting operation that caught a soon-to-be senior White House official accepting a bribe. And what happened to that investigation? The Justice Department quietly shut it down, not because they investigated thoroughly and found insufficient evidence, not because there were legal or jurisdictional issues that prevented prosecution. They just made it go away once Trump took office, and Homan became one of his top officials. When the news broke about this investigation being closed, Bondi's deputy and the FBI director issued a joint statement confirming that the Trump administration had shut down the investigation. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, then denied Homan took the money, telling reporters he never took the $50,000 and they should get their facts straight. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. So Schiff comes into this oversight hearing with a simple goal: get the facts straight. Did Homan take the money or not? It's a yes or no question. The kind of question the Attorney General of the United States should be able to answer without hesitation, especially when her own department investigated it. And Bondi's response was to deflect, evade, attack, and refuse to provide any substantive answer whatsoever. Schiff started by laying out the devastating context of why this hearing mattered. He reminded everyone that at her confirmation hearing in January, Bondi made a clear commitment that she would not politicize her position. But now, 9 months into her tenure, hundreds of career prosecutors have quit because they were required to take unethical actions or feared they would have to if they remained. Over 1,000 former federal prosecutors have sounded the alarm about the unprecedented degree to which the Justice Department is being abused to go after the president's enemies. Schiff said he approached the hearing with a heavy heart because as a former federal prosecutor himself, he served in a department that, whether under Democratic or Republican presidents, would never use the office to go after the president's enemies or hide the corruption of his friends. But today, he said, the Justice Department has been used to cover up possible corruption of high-level administration officials, to hide information about a child sex predator who befriended the president and cabinet members, and instead of preventing partisan weaponization, the department has engaged in brazenly political prosecutions at the president's explicit direction. That framing is crucial because it establishes what oversight is supposed to look like. This isn't about gotcha moments or partisan point scoring. This is about whether the Justice Department is functioning as an independent law enforcement agency or as Trump's personal legal team. And the pattern Schiff identified is unmistakable. Investigations into Trump's allies quietly disappear, while prosecutions of perceived enemies are loudly announced and pursued regardless of evidence. So Schiff asked Bondi directly, was it true what the White House press secretary said when she denied Homan took the money? Did he take the money? Bondi's response was to say she wasn't in office when that was handled, so she couldn't speak to it. Schiff pointed out that her deputy attorney general and the FBI director said there was no evidence Tom Homan committed a crime, yet they're the ones who shut down the investigation. He showed a picture of Homan being interviewed, probably on Fox News, where Homan was asked explicitly about the allegations and refused to answer whether he took the money. So Schiff asked again, did he take the money? Bondi said she'd answered that question multiple times, which was a lie. She hadn't answered it at all. Schiff pressed, with respect, I don't think you did answer. So what is the answer? Did he take the money? Bondi again said it happened prior to her confirmation, so she couldn't comment. Schiff asked if she knows sitting there what happened. Bondi said all she knows is that her deputy and the FBI director said there was no case, and that Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings she knows. Think about that response. The Attorney General of the United States, when asked a factual question about whether an investigation found that someone took bribe money, defers to the trustworthiness of the White House press secretary instead of citing investigative findings or evidence. That's not how law enforcement works. That's not how oversight works. That's how cover-ups work. Schiff then brought up the fact that if Bondi worked for him, she would have been fired because she was censured by Congress for lying. The hearing devolved into personal attacks at that point, with Bondi accusing Schiff of slandering good people and attacking the FBI director. But Schiff kept trying to get back to the substantive question. He asked whether Bondi would support providing the video or audio tape, if it exists, of Homan taking the $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Would she support a request by the committee to see that tape? Bondi told him to talk to the FBI director about that. Schiff pointed out that she's the Attorney General. This would be her decision. Will she support the request? Bondi said he'd have to tell her what is and isn't her decision, then pivoted to defending Homan as someone who's been fighting for the country since Trump took office. Schiff tried again. Will you support a request so that the committee and the American people can see that video or audio tape? Bondi responded by asking if Schiff would apologize to Donald Trump, completely abandoning any pretense of answering oversight questions. This pattern repeated throughout the hearing on question after question. Schiff laid out at the end just some of the questions Bondi refused to answer or answered only with personal attacks. She was asked whether she consulted with career ethics lawyers when she approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. She refused to answer. She was asked who played a role in having Trump's name flagged in Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. She refused to answer. She was asked whether Homan kept the $50,000. She refused to answer. She was asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 if he did keep it. She refused to answer. She was asked whether career prosecutors found insufficient evidence to charge James Comey. She refused to answer. She was asked how military strikes on boats in the Caribbean were legal. She refused to answer. She was asked if she discussed indicting James Comey with the president. She refused to answer. She was asked if she approved firing antitrust lawyers who disagreed with a merger decision. She refused to answer. She was asked whether she supports a restoration fund for January 6th insurrectionists. She refused to answer. She was asked whether she's firing career prosecutors just because they worked on January 6th investigations. She refused to answer. She was asked whether she believes immigration officials have to abide by court orders. She wouldn't even answer that. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing. The entire purpose is for Congress to ask the Justice Department how it's making decisions, whether it's following the law, whether investigations are being conducted properly, and the Attorney General treated it like a hostile interview she could just refuse to participate in. Every question was met with deflection, personal attacks, or complete silence. That's not normal. That's not acceptable. And it should alarm everyone regardless of political affiliation. Schiff made this point powerfully at the end of his questioning. This oversight hearing comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. It comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and the department made that investigation go away. It comes after dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing where members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about corruption, about the prosecution of political enemies, about whether the Justice Department is functioning as an independent law enforcement agency. And Bondi's response to all of that was to demand that Schiff apologize to Donald Trump for slandering him. That tells you everything about how she sees her role. She's not there to answer to Congress or the American people. She's there to defend Trump personally, to attack his critics, and to obstruct any oversight that might reveal uncomfortable truths about how the Justice Department is being weaponized. What happened in that hearing matters far beyond the clash of personalities because it exposes how fragile the guardrails of the Justice Department become when accountability is treated like a political inconvenience instead of a constitutional duty. What Schiff was trying to do wasn't theatrical and it wasn't partisan. It was textbook oversight. Congress has one core responsibility when it comes to the Justice Department: to ask whether the law is being enforced evenly without fear or favor, and whether investigations rise and fall based on evidence, not proximity to power. When Schiff repeatedly asked about the $50,000 cash allegation, he wasn't declaring Homan guilty. He was asking a narrower, more dangerous question. Why was the investigation shut down? And why won't the Attorney General explain that decision? That distinction matters enormously. In a functioning justice system, prosecutors don't owe loyalty to individuals. They owe transparency to the process. When an investigation is closed, especially one involving a senior administration official, there's usually a clear explanation: insufficient evidence, jurisdictional limits, legal standards not met, some concrete reason grounded in law and fact. What raised alarm in this exchange wasn't just the refusal to confirm basic facts, it was the pattern. Deflection, personal attacks, passing responsibility to other officials, invoking trust in the White House press secretary instead of citing investigative findings, these are not substitutes for answers. These are the tactics of someone who knows they can't defend their actions on the merits and is hoping aggression and evasion will make the questions go away. Schiff's broader argument connects dots that people might miss if they only focus on the viral moments. He laid out a clear pattern in which investigations into allies quietly disappear, while prosecutions of perceived enemies are loudly announced. That is the definition of politicization, regardless of which party is in power. Historically, the Justice Department has gone to great lengths to avoid even the appearance of that imbalance. Former attorneys general of both parties understood that public trust is the currency of law enforcement, and once it's spent, it's almost impossible to earn back. This is why Bondi's refusal to answer even basic oversight questions carries so much weight. Oversight hearings aren't trials. They're not about proving crimes in real time. They're about whether Congress can get straight answers about how decisions were made. When the Attorney General refuses to say whether evidence exists, whether tapes were reviewed, whether the department would even support sharing that information with Congress, it creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, doubt and suspicion grow until they consume whatever remaining trust people had in the institution. There's another critical layer here that deserves attention: the human cost inside the Justice Department itself. Schiff referenced hundreds of career prosecutors who have resigned or been pushed out. These aren't political appointees who serve at the pleasure of the president. These are professionals who spent decades working under Republican and Democratic administrations alike. When they warn that ethical lines are being crossed, when they resign rather than participate in what they see as abuse of power, that's not ideological noise. That's an institutional alarm that should make everyone pay attention. Schiff entered into the record statements from over 1,000 former Justice Department officials, warning that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. He entered statements from 282 former career officials who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions. He entered a letter from Michael Benari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, who nailed a letter to his door urging officials to do the right thing, follow the facts and the law, and warning that removing experienced career officials undermines our ability to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others seeking to harm our nation. These aren't partisan Democrats complaining about policy disagreements. These are career law enforcement professionals, many of whom are Republicans, who are sounding the alarm that something fundamental has broken in how the Justice Department operates. And Bondi's response to all of that documentation, all those warnings from experienced professionals, was to attack Schiff personally and refuse to engage with any of it substantively. There's a civic lesson embedded in this moment that everyone needs to understand. Democracy doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes when norms are treated as optional, when "I won't answer" becomes routine, when loyalty is valued more than legality. Oversight hearings like this are one of the last pressure points available to prevent that erosion. They're meant to be uncomfortable. They're meant to force clarity. When that clarity is denied, the denial itself becomes the story, because it reveals that the people in power believe they don't have to answer to anyone. The takeaway from this hearing shouldn't be blind trust in any politician, whether it's Schiff or Bondi or anyone else. The takeaway should be an insistence on standards that apply equally to everyone. If you believe corruption should be investigated no matter who's involved, then transparency matters. If you believe no one is above the law, then answers to oversight questions matter. And if you believe the Justice Department should protect the public rather than political power, then silence in moments like this should deeply concern you. This isn't about relitigating partisan battles or scoring political points. This is about asking whether the rule of law still operates the same way for the powerful as it does for everyone else. That question doesn't go away just because it wasn't answered in one hearing. In fact, the refusal to answer makes the question more urgent and more important. If Tom Homan didn't take the money, why won't they just say that clearly and provide the evidence? If the investigation found nothing, why won't they explain what they looked at and why it was insufficient? If tapes exist, why won't they let Congress review them? The only reason to refuse to answer these questions is if the answers would be damaging. Innocent people demand investigations. Guilty people obstruct them. And when the Attorney General of the United States acts like someone with something to hide, we should believe what we're seeing. The pattern is unmistakable now. Epstein files get buried and manipulated. Investigations into Trump allies get quietly shut down. Career prosecutors who try to do their jobs get fired or forced out. Oversight questions get met with personal attacks instead of answers. And through it all, Pam Bondi and the rest of Trump's Justice Department act like they're accountable to no one except Trump himself. That's not how the Justice Department is supposed to work. That's not what the Attorney General's oath requires. And if we accept this as normal, if we let them get away with refusing to answer basic questions about corruption and abuse of power, then we're complicit in the destruction of the institutions that are supposed to protect us from exactly this kind of authoritarianism. So pay attention, stay engaged, demand answers. Because democracy only works when the public refuses to look away, even when, especially when, the people in power want us to.